Welcome, good afternoon, and welcome back to the NFC Divisional Round edition of the Birds Blast with Kyle Quinn. Kyle, 22-10 victory last week against the Green Bay Packers. Not the sexiest performance by the Philadelphia Eagles, especially on the offense. Yeah. But, they kind of set the tone from the very beginning, recovering that opening kickoff fumble, cashed it in with a touchdown, and then kind of rode that to victory. How you feeling about their performance overall against the Packers on Wild Card Weekend?
Not totally unexpected. They came out a little bit rusty, I thought, on offense, and I thought that might be the case going in. Super sound defensive performance again. That was kind of another. That was one of those wins that we've seen the Eagles get plenty of times this season. I mean, probably more often than not, with winning on the back of their defense. Saquon with sort of a quiet 119 rushing yards, but still a good day for him nonetheless. And then just an offense that limited the amount of mistakes that they made. And I probably was a little bit closer than anybody was comfortable with, but they ended up pulling away from in the second half like I kind of expected them to do. So pretty much not entirely unexpected performance by the Eagles this week.
Now, I can't say that this is any kind of surprise, this game. This has been the formula all season long, getting off to those slow starts offensively and then pulling away in the second half on the feet of Saquon Barkley. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I'm surprised what happened. But, Kyle, you got to kind of look a little bit deeper into this. The Eagles' defense forced 3 turnovers in the first half. That's amazing. Mm-hmm. And then they come out of but they only come out as a team with 10 points going into halftime. I know that's not a stat that anybody can feel comfortable with, and in no real universe, the Eagles should have won that football game when you do not capitalize like that.
Yeah, I mean, look, the defense getting better and better every week at forcing turnovers. This has been like the second half of the season has been just ridiculous with the amount of turnovers they forced. But you're right. I mean, the offense isn't, I don't think, capitalizing enough on the good position that the defense puts them in, and they're going to have to do that once they start facing better competition than a team like the Packers. And we'll talk about the Rams and with all the weather factors in this game. But so they might not need to have a crazy offensive performance this week, but if they plan on winning the Super Bowl, then they're going to need to be a little bit better in that area.
14 forced turnovers by the Eagle defense over the last 4 games.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Insane. It's amazing. Yeah, I got to give it to them there. Mm-hmm. But you got to feel like they got to come away with more than 10 points. So let's kind of center in on the Eagle offense, because that is the topic of this week. That's been everyone's been talking about, especially old number 1, Jalen Hurts, coming back from the 3.5-week absence, coming off the concussion, 13 for 21, 131 yards, and 2 touchdown passes. Is it just the fact, Kyle, people want him to be 2022 Jalen Hurts, and that is not the reality of Jalen Hurts, but the reality of him is a 13 for 21 for 2 touchdowns, a manageable type game that he's not necessarily going to be able to win on his own?
So, yeah, I mean, I think hoping that you get the 2022 version of Jalen Hurts is a pipe dream at this point. But I think the reality of what people expect from him is just the passing offense look better than it does. I mean, if you have A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, and you have Dallas Goedert, and you have an offensive line that gives you the amount of time that it does, then you just expect it to look better. And I mean, it's not necessarily about the numbers, right? It's more about it when you see it. And I mean, I understand that they win and he can be efficient in the later part of the games. And that's really what matters, right? Is getting the win at the end of the day. But I think people look at a Jalen Hurts performance and see him going 2 whole quarters with basically 2 whole quarters, an entire hour of real time without completing a pass. And that's not good enough, right? I mean, it was good enough against the Packers, but look, the reality is you line up against a better team that day and you probably lose that game. And what we're all sitting here talking about this week. It's not because of the defense forcing 4 turnovers, right? It wasn't even the special teams. They had a fine day on themselves besides Jake Elliott missing that field goal. It would come down to the quarterback because it wasn't Saquon either. And I mean, if you're going to tell me that A.J. Brown is only getting one reception and like 3 targets the whole game. That's it's not a good enough passing performance. So that's something that's going to need to be better. Again, if they want to make a deep run here.
Yeah, we've talked about it all season, right? There was a time when we were talking that the team was winning in spite of the quarterback's performance, but now as we're dwindling the numbers down, 8 now remaining in the NFL, you're not, and then Sam Darnold's now out of it, so you're pretty much down to the top 8 quarterbacks in the NFL at this point, and you got to imagine at some point the switch has got to flip. Now there's some split. There's some split conversation about Jalen Hurts. Were the receivers not running proper routes? There's been some footage of that. There's also been some talk about the improper play calls that put Jalen Hurts maybe not in the greatest of positions to make plays on Sunday. But I'll fight back with this. The Eagles don't throw the ball to the middle of the field, and they haven't started that. That didn't start Sunday. That's been going on all season. So all those individuals out there looking for the quick hitters, the slant patterns, where have they been all year? That's what I want to say. And I've heard that conversation about, well, they don't throw, they go to the middle of the field. No kidding. They haven't been doing that all season. Only 21 pass attempts on Sunday, only 4 times to the middle of the field for 5% of the Eagle offense that ran through the middle of the field. But Kyle, I am concerned because you're not going to sell me on the fact that the Eagles are going to run their way to a Super Bowl championship on the feet of Saquon Barkley.
No, I mean, it's not necessarily going to, wouldn't have to be Saquon carrying you. I think if you were to say that they were winning a Super Bowl, we'd all point to the defense as the reason why. And they can win a Super Bowl in the back of a defense that is playing the way that is playing. But I mean, I'm with you. And obviously it wasn't a play calling masterclass by any stretch by Kellen Moore. But, you know, I know it's easy to watch the film and say that this guy's not open, this guy's not open, this guy's not open. But this is the NFL, and there's something called being NFL open, where even when you're one-on-one and you're A.J. Brown, you think that you win that matchup. And I don't think the quarterback throws with enough anticipation at times. I don't think he throws receivers open enough. So I understand that, you know, maybe the play calling could be better, and you'd like to see the Ben Johnson type thing where guys are springing wide open and there's nobody within 10 yards of them. But there's also other ways to be efficient in the passing game and push the ball down the field. And that's giving your talented wide receivers a chance when they're lined up one-on-one against somebody. So you can't sit here and tell me that both of these things can be true, is that A.J. Brown is quote unquote always open, and then say with the same breath that nobody was getting open for Jalen Hurts. So I just don't buy that.
I want to table the conversation about the Eagle offense, but we are going to come back to it because I do got to get your opinion on the A.J. Brown book reading thing. But let's head back over to the Green Bay Packers. Jordan Love on the day, 20 of 33, 3 interceptions, just not a good day. But I think a lot, not as much needs to be or is being paid attention to the injury problems that really kind of surfaced for the Packers in this game. They lost the offensive guard Jenkins, which, Kyle, I ain't gonna lie to you, that to me was the end of the game at that point. They also lost Dobbs, Reed, and Myers throughout this game. And people are equating this to the body bag. There was no body bag game. Let's get that out of here. But, you know, Jordan Love, I'm not a big Jordan Love fan. Wasn't going into this game thinking that way. But do you put any credence onto the injuries affecting the outcome of this game?
I mean, not necessarily. I think the Jair Alexander one was big, but that we knew that going in, right? Yeah. I mean, these were all things that we had talked about.
Watson and all that.
Yeah, before the game. Now I know they did lose a couple more receivers in the game, and that obviously hurt them. But Jordan Love was just bad in that game.
Yeah, he was.
And I think he's been pretty streaky all season long. So, and that's another thing that we thought and knew going into the game about Jordan Love. And he had a really bad day. I mean, he threw 3 interceptions. So, it was 3 interceptions, right, from Jordan Love?
Yeah, 3 interceptions from Jordan Love, and then fumbled on the special teams.
Right. Yeah. So just, a really bad Jordan Love day. And I don't know if, maybe, better wide receivers make it easier on him, but they don't have those. That's the Packers,
And I'm not going to take away what the Eagle defense did bring to bear on Sunday. They played really well. Now, of course, Nakobe Dean gone with the patella tendon problem, ripped, torn. Kyle, I was prepared to put the H next to Nakobe Dean's name in my Howie Roseman, you suck draft tracker in his drafting ability. And I was going to give Howie the H on Jordan or Nakobe Dean, but I can't. And it's not because of performance, because when he's on the field, Nakobe Dean has shown he is a He belongs out there. And as a third-round draft pick, he's definitely putting that type of work in, more so. But, Kyle, being able to be on the field is part of your stock as a player.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, you got to think, are we going down the Jordan Hicks road with Nakobe Dean?
I don't know. I mean, I thought Nakobe was pretty much healthy all season long, right? He missed the one. Yeah. Did he miss a game with the abdomen, or I don't even think he missed a game with that.
Yeah, I think right towards the end of the season with the ab, he missed but that was towards garbage time and all that.
I mean, I don't know what you can do about a guy tearing his PCL. It's kind of just like bad luck, right? I don't think he has like an issue or a history of like soft tissue injury. So I don't know. I mean, look, it's a huge loss. The bottom line. Like, I don't know if I don't know if you can really fault the general manager for taking a flyer on a guy in the third round with that kind
Absolutely
of talent.
Can fault the general manager for taking a flyer for a guy in the third round. You're damn right you can.
No, it's silly. I know you will.
No, it's not silly. Yes, you can do
silly.
that.
No, it is completely silly. No, it is silly, and I know you're going to try and do it, but it'd be completely absurd. I mean, that's where you take those swings. And I mean, look, in terms of the talent, he was right. That was a hit in terms of what like Nakobe Dean can play. He can lead a defense too. I mean, he was the green dot guy. So, yeah, I mean, the injury sucks, but it's not something where you're going back and saying like, damn, like, what a terrible draft pick. Like, he's a third round pick.
I disagree. You take a flyer on a guy in the sixth round. You actually invest draft capital on a guy in the third round. Freddie Burns the third checking in with I Still Fire Harry Roseman twice today and 3 times on Sunday. Freddie Burns, he's trying to poke the bear here. There was enough space to make some of those throws quickly. Freddie, we agree, but the problem is they haven't done it all season long. And ever since the bye week, we can agree to this, right, Kyle? The Eagle offense has kind of gone a different way. It was all run heavy. There's a reason why Jalen Hurts hasn't thrown many or any interceptions since that point. The Eagles are not putting him in a position to have to make tight throws through tight windows, correct?
Well, I don't know if I think it's more him. I don't know if they've coached it out of him, but they've definitely made a concerted effort to make him more conservative. And that's why you don't see him throwing interceptions, is because he's not taking those chances, taking the one-on-one shot. So
Doughboy checking in. Well, as an Eagles fan, Jalen Hurts has to do better passing the football. Kellen Moore high school play calling is horrible. Again, I've said this all season. I don't think it's Kellen Moore's playbook. I think this is the Moriani playbook. It's a combination of 2 different playbooks because, yes, Kellen Moore is predicated on a lot of slant patterns, a lot of motion offense. There's been more motion in this offense than last season, but not Kellen Moore motion. And the Eagles just don't do those things for whatever reason with Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, that's what makes me wonder if this is, if it's what you're saying or if this is what they actually think is the best possible offense for Hurts to succeed. And I always wonder why they don't do those throws over the middle of quick hitter slants and stuff. I don't know. And maybe it's a weird theory. You also do have to kind of factor in it's like very particularly tall offensive line. And Jalen's not a very tall QB. So, I mean, there could be something to just as soon as he takes a snap, he doesn't immediately see very well the middle of the field. I mean, that could just be like, the nature of the beast there.
I'm sure he can see over the keyboard at the ATM machine as he's pulling money out every 2 weeks. So Shane Steichen thing too, which is a huge part of 2022 Hurts. Freddie brings up a good point. Kellen Moore is definitely, his name's in the news all over the place about interviewing 3 teams. I think he's going to interview for their head coaching job. Saints, Jags, and Cowboys, I believe, are the teams. I honestly think that Shane Steichen was a bigger loss than I think Kellen Moore will be. I'm not fretting over Kellen Moore leaving, Kyle. That's how I feel about this. I don't know where Kellen Moore has been such a huge influence on this team.
Yeah, I don't know if I don't know if he his offense doesn't pop off the screen like you think about when it comes to guys like Ben Johnson and stuff like that. But I do find it interesting why he's getting so many head coaching looks. So if you consider, I think, I'm not 100% certain if I have the number right, but I think the Eagles are 7th in the league in points per game. And last season under Brian Johnson, they were 7th in the league in points per game. Now, this offense has Saquon Barkley added to it.
Yeah.
So the only difference that I can think of as to why Kellen Moore would get head coaching looks and Brian Johnson wasn't is the amount of turnovers of Jalen. I mean, he was leading the league, I think, in turnovers last season at one point, or I don't know if he finished the season that way. And this year he's got to be toward the bottom of the league in the amount of turnovers. So I think maybe they perceive it as Kellen Moore is getting the most out of the quarterback. Really the only thing I can think of.
And I think you might have something there. And we went into this season and we both were high on the pickup of Saquon Barkley. We both wanted B. John Robinson here 2 years ago. It really matters to have that type of running back on any offense. I don't care yes, it's a pass heavy league, but you still need a bell cow. You still need a guy that you can give the ball to 25 times a game if you need to. Saquon Barkley has been the difference maker on this team this year.
Yeah. I mean, it's just a matter of adding more talented players to your roster. You're going to have a better team.
Yeah. Another thing with Jalen, he holds the ball too long or uses your legs. It's not there. Again, Doughboy, your points are accurate. It's something we've talked about all the time. The whole trying to make him a pocket passer. Now that first touchdown, that beautiful. Listen, I know he was back in the damn pocket for about 25 seconds, but that was a cross the middle play to Dotson. It was a beautiful touchdown early in the game there. But you're not going to get those types of plays all the time. Kyle, where do you come out on the Jalen Hurts pocket passer versus a lot more motion and rolling out type stuff?
I mean, I just wanted to make the right decision. I wanted to be decisive with it. Like the holding the ball too long, I think, is a thing. To Mr. Doughboy's point here, that was a pretty brutal sack that he took in that Packers game.
Yeah.
I think he held the ball for like 7 seconds at one point and ended up taking a sack. That can't happen. I mean, that just absolutely has to stop. And that's, I think, the one thing that a lot of people get frustrated about with Hurts.
I agree. All right, Kyle, let's transition now to the AJ Brown situation, because I don't think enough attention is being paid to this. I honestly don't. AJ was targeted 3 times for 1 reception for 10 yards in this game. It is what it is. The Eagles won ultimately, but then the Fox film crew did something unthinkable. And then I'm sure the Eagles management and the front office was freaking out when this camera angle of AJ Brown reading a book on the sidelines was captured for all to see. What did the Eagle Homer fans try to do immediately? Divert the story that there's nothing to see here. Kyle, I think there is something to see there. Now, we've said it, and I've been on record by saying it doesn't matter if the quarterback and wide receiver are best friends. That has no bearing on winning on the field. But the fans in this town, for some reason, have to believe that everything is and everybody is like best friends on this football team at all times. Kyle, is there more to this story that's being talked about?
I honestly don't think so. Like, I think the reaction was appropriate in that I don't think people really thought it was that big of a deal. I think people just kind of thought it was funny. I mean, think about it. Like, if he's going to get emotional about only getting 1 catch or only getting 3 targets, what would you rather him do? Sit on his own in silence and like read his book, which is like his proverbial punching bag? Or do you want him yapping in Jalen Hurts' ear, like we've seen T.O. do to McNabb, or like we've seen him do to Jalen before? I mean, it feels like we kind of want it both ways. You can't really have it. So I'm okay with if that's how he wants to, sort of talk himself down, his little Serenity Now moment. He needs to say, like, whatever, let me read this book just so I can get my, so I don't.
Do you think that's what do you think that's why he was reading the book, was to kind of calm himself down?
Maybe. Yeah. And like, I mean, there's something to that, right? Like, obviously, I don't know. I think we'd be lying to ourselves if we didn't think that AJ Brown only having 1 catch is okay with him, right? They're like, and that's okay with me, right? Just as long as he takes that out in I guess a productive way or not a negative way. So, I mean, like, I'm okay if he doesn't like the fact that he's not impacting the game as much as he's capable of. Like, that's what I think a competitive wide receiver does. What I don't want him to do is make a big deal out of it. I mean, and he didn't. So I'm good with that.
Yeah, no, listen, to me, it's regardless, as you said, if that's what he needs to do to talk himself off the proverbial ledge, and so be it. Read your book all day long. I'm not going to get into the guy's mental well-being or the way he copes. It's everybody copes differently and everybody processes differently, and it's fine. But the fact that the bigger story for me, as I said, was that the fans, a certain section of the fan base, just wants that thing to go away. They wanted to step on it and bury it as soon as it hit, because they didn't want to have to answer questions about the relationship between the quarterback and wide receiver again, which is the reality of it, guys. 53 of those people on that team are not best friends. I'm sure there's some problems in the locker rooms, but just like in a lot of walks of life where you go on the field of battle to perform a mission or a job, you come together for the common good, and that's to win. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. And I don't know if the book reading has anything to do with him being friends with anybody. I really just, and that is a thing that he's been doing all season long. It was just the first time it was really picked up on a broadcast camera. So like that's his thing, whatever. I mean, I really don't think it's that big of a deal.
I don't think it's a big of a deal, but I think the bigger deal is that we tried to kind of wish it away, which I do think that's a huge deal. And that's kind of part of where the pain and the hatred boiling inside of me, Kyle Quinn. All right, Kyle, let's talk some. Talk some Birds Blast stat pack from this game. 1 for 4. Kyle, I'm not liking the 1 for 4 in the red zone. This is not good. I know that they had opportunities. They cashed one of them in. That was the one. But Kyle, 1 for 4 in the red zone. Josh Allen, Pat Mahomes, Matt Stafford, and Jared Goff, you got to do better than that against those types of players.
Yeah, I mean, look, we know it wasn't a good day for the offense. And that's for a lot of different reasons, the red zone being one of them. They haven't been great in the red zone all season long, but, at least in terms of the passing offense, we know, all of these stats are going to show what we know is that they're going to need to get better in that area if they want to make a deep run here.
10 points in the first half, 12 points in the second half. We've kind of talked that all day long. 7 penalties for 64 yards, Kyle Quinn. Another number trending in the wrong direction. And we're going to get into why I think that is a real big part of coming into Sunday's game. But what do you think about the penalties? It's too high, right? 7 for 64?
Yeah, I mean, that was, again, like an uncharacteristically bad day, I think, Eagles penalty-wise. The Eagles have not been one of the more penalized teams in the league this season. That wasn't a great day, but, we've had worse days, and it did come back to bite them in that Green Bay game, so...
And then the 4 turnovers forced, again, 14 turnovers forced by this Eagle defense over the last 4 games. Absolutely Herculean, amazing. They struggled all season long, but they saved the best for last as we're trending into the playoffs, and they're turning that ball over. They're getting the ball turned over to them at an epic clip. No turnovers by the Eagles. They allowed Jalen Hurts to get sacked twice for 10 yards. They got Jordan Love 2 times for 17 yards, and 1 for 1, Kyle Quinn, on 4th down conversions, all to a tune of a 22-10 win. And yes, Kyle, you predicted the game correctly. You had the Packers beating the Eagles, or the Eagles beating the Packers. I had the Packers beating the Eagles, so I was wrong, and you took Saquon Barkley as your game MVP. I'll give you Saquon. I think that at the end of this game, they did what they had to do, and they turned the recipe over to the man who's gotten them there. And yes, Saquon did take over at the end, had that big break at the end of the game, but slid down to keep the clock rolling. I'll give you Saquon for this one.
Yeah. And I mean, just another W for me, another L for you. One of us has the pulse of this team. One of us is just freaking completely clueless.
One of us is running his own narrative that's going to eventually bear fruit. I'm telling you. All right. I'm just holding out for that day. All right, Kyle, we're going to turn the page. We're moving on. Actually, I'm going to save that. Let's move on now. The Rams are going to be the Eagles' next opponent tomorrow at 3 p.m. at snowy, wet, slushy, muddy Lincoln Financial Field. The Rams last week handed the Vikings a 27-9 loss, which, Sam Darnold is friggin' Sam Darnold. I don't think there's any more thing to say about that. The Eagles and the Rams did face each other earlier in this season. The Eagles winning 37-20. That was definitely on the feet of Saquon Barkley, responsible for over 300 all-purpose yards as Barkley took that thing over, 255 on the ground, and then 47 through the air. But with all that, let's get into this. Kyle, the Eagles will go with their midnight greens and their white bottoms for this game. The Rams going with the white and blue, as reported by the Gridiron database. The weather in Philadelphia, the big story of the week. Snow between 1 and 3 inches, high of 35 and a low of 16. I've seen 1 to 3, 3 to 5, 2 to 6. I've seen it all. It's going to snow. I guess we can kind of agree to that. And injury report wise, Eagles, let's get into AJ Brown. We talked about the book situation. Now let's talk about his physical situation. Is the knee worse than what we're being told, or is he really struggling with that knee?
Well, I guess it depends on what you think we're being told. I think what they've told us that it's something that he's kind of going to have to manage. And I mean, he's not 100%, but he's good enough to play because it's postseason, right? But yeah, I mean, look, it did look like it was affecting him a little bit in that Green Bay game. He did practice a little bit more this week than he did last week. So, maybe they feel like it's in a spot where it's getting better. We'll see. Obviously, it's something to keep an eye on, though.
There's a couple Eagles dealing with some naggers. Dallas Goedert was sick, did not participate in practice yesterday. A.J. Brown was limited, as you mentioned there, because of the knee. Saquon, Cam Jurgens, Mulata, Pickett, Josh Sweat, and Byron Young given rest, dealing with hamstring problems, ribs problems, so on and so forth. But relatively speaking, the Eagles go into this game pretty healthy, with the exception of the loss from the Kobe Dean, which we are going to talk about. For the Rams, Bobby Brown, shoulder problem. The nose tackle has been downgraded from questionable to or upgraded from limited to questionable. He should be a go, along with Witherspoon, the cornerback. They are both trending in the right direction to go for the Rams. Other than that, the Rams, Higbee's got a chest problem he's been dealing with. He was limited participant. All for all, though, Kyle, with maybe the exception of the Rams and Witherspoon. How do you this is a pretty evenly, everyone's coming into this game seemingly as banged up as normal as it should be at this time of the year.
Yeah, I mean, and I think both teams are going to be considerably more healthy than they were when they met earlier this season. I know the Rams had the receivers. I think they were missing Havenstein, and the Eagles are missing Devontae Smith and Goddard. I think Slay too. So both teams, well, definitely banged up, still considerably more healthy than they were earlier in the year.
And Kupp and Nakua were just coming back off of injuries for that game.
Yep.
So this was definitely a different game. Real quick, in that game, the Eagles were 2 for 5 in the red zone, 13 first half points, 24 second half points, 4 for 52 on the penalties, one forced turnover, no turnovers committed. They got to Stafford once for 12 yards. Jalen got sacked. Jalen got sacked once for 12 yards. They got to Stafford 5 times for 45 yards, and they were 0 for 1 on fourth down conversions in that game, Kyle Quinn. In the 37-20 Eagles victory. Mm-hmm. But with all that said, Kyle, I want to hear from you right now. Give me your Eagles key matchup, Eagle offense versus Ram defense.
So I think the key matchup here is going to be our tackles versus the Rams pass rush has gotten better and better as the year has gone on. Jared Verse is going to win the defensive rookie of the year, and they're like a young defensive line, and they had to be ever since Aaron Donald retired, but it's worked out for them really well, and they've only gotten better as the season's gone on. Now, I like this matchup for the Eagles. I mean, I can't remember the last time a defensive lineman or a defensive end has wrecked a game against the Eagles and Jeff Stoutland's offensive line. They always, not even Aaron Donald, they've always had good game plans for guys like that, and they had a good game plan against Jared Verse the last time. So whether it's Mailata or whether it's Lane Johnson, I feel good about that matchup. But that's sort of where I think the Rams' bread is buttered on the defensive side of the ball.
You mentioned Jared Verse, and of course, we're going to talk a little bit about him in a second too. Mm-hmm. I also kind of believe it's between that on the Eagle offense versus Ram defense. I like the Eagle. It's Hurts and the receivers versus the versus that front four of the Rams as well. I honestly think if we can get something going early with the pass game, if we're able to get Jalen Hurts proper time to throw that football, to open things up through the air before they start kind of laying down the Barkley, it's going to be a messy day. I don't think it's going to be Snowball 2.0. It's going to be more of a Cleveland Brown in December type day game. It's going to be probably more of a muddy affair than anything else. But running the football is going to be paramount in this game. But I think they're going to have to open it up at some point. And Jalen Hurts and his wide receivers versus that front four, can the Rams get enough pressure on him? What's the Rams' game plan? Are they going to stack the box and try to contain Barkley, or are they going to make Jalen Hurts throw the football? That is my key matchup. That side of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think they are probably going to try and challenge Jalen Hurts to throw the football. I mean, especially considering that, the weather will, I believe, affect this game and the game plan from both sides. Now, I don't know if they're going to be able to open up in terms of, deep shots, but I would like to see them get that quick passing game going, get the ball out of Hurts' hand quick, and just, let the Rams know that we are willing and able to do that so that we can get Saquon Barkley going a little bit later on.
What is your Eagle defense versus Ram offense key matchup?
Yeah, so this is going to be, I would say, the Eagles' back seven versus the Rams' short passing game. I mean, Sean McVay is a really smart offensive mind, and he sees that Nakobe Dean is out for the Eagles team, and he's going to try to exploit that middle of the field with guys who are physical like Puka Nacua, Tyler Higbee even. So whether it's Zach Bond in coverage, or it's the safeties, or it's Slay on Nacua, they need to be prepared for Matt Stafford to try and get the ball out of his hands as quickly as he possibly can and exploit that middle of the field. So it's going to have to be a collective effort with Nakobe Dean out, but that's the matchup that I'm watching most in terms of the Rams offense versus Eagles defense.
Yeah, I think everybody in the city of Philadelphia is watching that same matchup, and that's my matchup as well. How could it not be? It's probably the most glaring point of this week in this game. Burks and Trotter are probably going to be the rotation there on that left side. Or they're going to rotate left and right, but do the Rams exploit the middle of the field, which they'd be foolish not to with, as you mentioned, Higbee and Kupp as well. Yeah, absolutely. And they would be foolish not to.
Yeah. Yep.
Right.
I mean, and even, beside the wide receivers, they might try to get it off to Kyron Williams.
Yeah.
In the middle of the field, Sean McVay is going to be creative in exploiting that weakness.
And what is your X factor?
So the X factor here, and I guess this just goes exactly to what the defensive matchup is. It's got to be Zach Bond. I mean, I know that Oren Burks and Jeremiah Trotter Jr. are going to be the de facto Nakobe Dean replacements, but I can't put this game on them, right? I think it's going to be up to Zach Bond, our all-pro linebacker, to pick up some of the slack that Nakobe Dean's leaving off the field, and that those guys are inevitably going to leave on the field, right? Oren Burks is he's the other scrap heap linebacker we got that didn't become an all-pro like Zach Bond, and then Jeremiah Trotter Jr., fifth-round rookie, undersized kid. So I think it's going to be up to Zach Bond over the middle of the field to really step up and be the X factor in this game.
So my X factor, I thought about going with Elliott again because that seems to be the popular one, but I'm not going to do that. Let's go different. I'm going to go with McVay. Honestly, I think McVay is the X factor for the Rams here. I think they, got into this game. You got one Super Bowl winning coach going up against one Super Bowl losing coach. And how much is Sean McVay and his Super Bowl winning pedigree, along with his quarterback who's won a Super Bowl, how much does that actually help the Rams in a hostile environment, bad weather, in the Elite 8 round of the NFL playoffs? I honestly think that's what it's going to come down to. It's going to come down to McVay and his pedigree versus Sirianni and his wannabe. So that's my X factor.
I would say it's more down to McVay versus Vic Fangio, right? I mean, that's the defensive mind on the Eagles versus the offensive mind on the Rams. So that's the matchup I'm watching. I think Fangio actually has historically pretty good numbers going up against Sean McVay offenses, and Sean McVay has said in the past that Vic Fangio's defense is the toughest one to prepare for. So especially with the weather, I agree with you that the McVay is an X factor, but I also like that matchup for the Eagles.
All right, now, Kyle, it's time to talk about Mr. Jared Verse. So earlier in the week, Jared Verse, who hails from the Berwick area of Pennsylvania, which is out there north central PA, about maybe 30 miles from Bloomsburg, not necessarily Philadelphia territory, more Pittsburgh, if you ask me, but came out with a statement. I quote, "I hate Eagles fans. They're so annoying. I hate Eagles fans. When I see that green and white, I hate it. I actually get upset, like I actually generally get hot." Kyle Quinn, I think this is brilliant psychological warfare against the Philadelphia Eagle fan base and the Philadelphia Eagles with a team that has had problems with containing their emotions on the field. We've seen it all season long. Jalen Carter getting dinged up with 15 yards, GJ getting tossed out of games. I think this is not your usual bulletin board fodder. I think this is extremely tactical and very strategic from this young man to the Eagle fans.
No, I don't. I mean, he already tried to walk it back and say that he wishes he didn't use that word. I just think that was, another classic case of something. You know what? Funny thing is, when we played them in LA, he saw a lot of that green that he hates in his own stadium.
Yep.
And he's from this area. So I don't really quite understand the thought process behind that. I don't think it was strategic. I just think it was.
I do.
Okay. I mean, I'm sure you do. But I definitely don't. So.
All right. I think it's going to, and the reaction of it, of course, a typical reaction that Eagle fans are going to have. They're going to, stand up for their own. They're going to shower him with booze. Tomorrow is going to be fun and all that. And that's fine. The fans can do all they want. I just don't want the players taking, their emotions in their own hands. Because what is it? This is the same crew that tossed Gardner Johnson out coming to do this game on Sunday, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I mean, that Jared Verse plays defense and Gardner Johnson and Jalen Carter also play defense. I mean, there's nobody really that's going to provoke Jared Verse on our offense.
I don't know. Emotions. Listen, it's a ticking time bomb type of strategy. It's ticking in his brain and all that.
Is that right? Okay.
No, I was in combat 6 times, man. I my mind always goes to that spot.
The art of war. Yeah.
Not the combat. Yes, the art of war. Exactly. Sun Tzu would be proud of Mr. Jared Verse, honestly. All right, let's get into this Sunday. Let's start with a sick boy. Man, we got a bunch of. Here's one of your boys there. Tom from Middletown's predicting the Eagles to win 27-20. Great timing, Tom, because we're going to move into this the prediction part of the show right now. Before, though, we have to ask Kyle Quinn, what are your 3 keys to Eagles victory?
Yeah, so I think they need to keep this one on the ground as much as they possibly can. I think, like you mentioned, if they're going to do this, if they're going to try and pass to add that threat, then they're going to need to do it, I think, in a way that's quick. I know we hate the screen game with Kellen Moore and Brian Johnson last year, but that might have to be something that they have to try and do, or do those quick hitter slants up the middle. But I think for the most part, they need to make sure that they keep this ball on the ground, because that's going to help them do key to victory number 2, and that's make fewer mistakes than the Rams. I think this has the potential to be a pretty sloppy game, so I do expect both teams to make a mistake or two. We just need to be the one that makes fewer. And then finally, I think in a snow game like this, they need to be prepared to tackle and be physical. I don't think the Rams are going to be prepared to be physical and tackle. I don't think anyone wants to tackle Saquon Barkley in the snow. So the Eagles need to come out and be the more physical team, be ready to lay thumping on the Rams offensive players, and be the more physical team up front on offense as well. So if they do those things, I think this should be a pretty comfortable one for the Eagles.
Yeah, listen, I agree, but I'm not going to take credence too much into the snow situation. Yeah, it's going to be weather is going to be a problem, but I don't. For some reason, I never bought into the whole, well, you're from Los Angeles, you're from Tampa, you're from Miami, you're going to come into a cold weather climate and not perform well. I know it's going to affect you, but I recall a game not too long ago, or maybe it is now. Tampa Bay Buccaneers came up here in minus 12-degree temperatures in an NFC Championship game and smacked that Eagle ass. So I don't pay attention too much anymore to that that cold weather, warm weather team crap. I really don't.
Well, so I mean, I don't think it's a huge deal, the cold weather thing, but the weather will be. I mean, the inclement weather will be. And
yes,
the Rams,
it'll affect both teams, though. But it'll affect both.
Yeah. Correct. But it will definitely, I think, affect the Rams a little bit more, especially having been, they have been on the West Coast now for, I think, like a calendar month. So they've enjoyed some warm weather for a while. They've had to go to Arizona and then back to LA and then fly all the way to Philly, where, they're going to be a little bit off schedule, and then in the inclement weather. Just I think all those little things sort of add up in the Eagles' favor. And you also have to remember that Tampa Bay Bucs team won the Super Bowl. Like, they were really good. This is a Rams team that won 10 games in kind of a crappy division. So I think a little bit different circumstances there. That was probably something where we use that as something to cope and overlook the Bucs. Whereas I think this actually is just another advantage on the Eagles side here against the Rams.
Oh no, we totally overlooked the Bucs. I remember that. That was very fresh in my memory. I have vivid memories of that week leading up to that game, and I have vivid memories of that day. So we absolutely overlooked the Bucs. All right, my 3 keys to Eagle victory. Fast start. We've been kind of getting better with that over the last few games. They've been scoring. They now have 3 opening drive touchdowns over the last 4 games, which I'm okay with. They've now scored 9 first quarter touchdowns heading in, to include the playoffs. So let's continue that. Give me a touchdown to get this thing going, especially kind of break the seal in this weather. 1 touchdown might be the difference in a game like this. So you need to get off to the fast start. Second thing is Eagle defense, be aware of the motion. Be aware of the creativity from motions and just the camouflage that the Rams might try to send your way, especially dealing with the linebacker situation that the Eagles are going to have. They're going to have the Dean in there. They're going to have Burks in there. They may try to get silly with camouflage and motion and try to confuse the Eagle defense. Be aware of that on the defensive side of the ball. And my number one, the key Eagles victory is Jalen Hurts has got to be better. He's just got to be better. That's the bottom line.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I don't know if this is going to be the game where we need to see a prolific passing performance, but I just think in terms of a deep postseason run, then they're definitely going to need to get more of the quarterback.
Absolutely. And now let's get back to the fun part. And Tom from Middletown is going to give us a segue right into that. He's picking Rams 27-20. Kyle Quinn, what is your game prediction? Who's going to win? What's the score? And who's your team MVP or game MVP?
Yeah, Eagles are going to win. It's going to be, say 28-14. The Rams garbage time touchdown in there. Game MVP is my guy Saquon, who had 300 yards against the Rams the last time. Don't think he'll quite have that many yards, but I think he'll have another good day against this Rams defense, and I'll pick Saquon, game MVP.
I'm going to go 31-28, and I say it's 31-28 Eagles. All right, but I'm going to put a but and an asterisk and a all this other stuff, comma, semicolon, whatever. I could definitely see the Eagles losing this game 31-28. I think it comes down to a Jake Elliott game tying, winning field goal at the end. Game's tied, and he wins it at the end, or he misses it at the end and they lose. That's what I'm predicting happening in this game. They're going to try to stay away from the field goal situation with the weather, but I think they're going to have no choice, and it's going to boil down to that. I see 31-28 Eagles winning, but I could see them also losing 31-28.
Yeah, I don't see any way that the Rams score that amount of points against this defense in Philly.
Well, I do. No so, and my game MVP is Jake Elliott. I think he actually hits it, and we send us into the NFC Championship game on the road to Detroit. Doughboy saying Ben Johnson and Cliff Kingsbury are the best offensive coaches in the NFL. Kyle, do you agree with that?
No. I mean, Ben Johnson, yeah. I don't know about Cliff Kingsbury. You have to remember Andy Reid is a 3-time Super Bowl champion, potentially going for a 3-peat here.
That's a good point.
He's probably the best at developing quarterbacks in the league. And then we do have a guy, Sean McVay, who we're playing this week, who's, a really brilliant offensive mind himself, who's also won a Super Bowl. So, no, I wouldn't say that I fully agree with that 100%. Ben Johnson is great. Yeah, he might be up there. But, yeah, I don't know where you come up with that.
Who is your dark horse to replace Kellen Moore, if you've even thought that far out, if Moore leaves via head coaching?
Well, unfortunately, the dark horse is probably Doug Nussmeier, the Eagles quarterback coach.
Well, thank God we have the whole offseason.
Yeah, it's an unfortunate answer, I know, but that's the way they do things.
E-Money says, go Birds. I agree. Well, yeah, kind of. I do agree. E-Money also says Eagles 57-17 over the Rams. I guess he's predicting a straight up repeat of the last time the Eagles played. By the way, there's an interesting factoid. The last game Matt Stafford played in the snow was that LaShawn McCoy game back in 2013.
Yeah, that's right.
That's pretty, I didn't realize that. So that's
cool.
That's an interesting point of trivia there, but he's saying 57-17. Al Zafiri says, is motion even used that much with that type of game in the weather? You know what, Al? That's a good point. But they're not going to be able to just go up and start bulldozing their way through. Maybe they try to do that, but you got to run motion. You can still run motion in a game like that. I'm telling you, I think there's going to be barely enough snow covering the field. I think it's going to be more muddy and just sloppy than snowy, Kyle Quinn.
Yeah, I don't think that's something where you go away from using motion is really just sort of window dressing.
Yeah,
for the defense. So that's, I don't think that's something that you stop doing because of the weather. I think it's always worth showing the defense a couple different looks
I'm sorry that I had to put a comment like this up there, but I got to let the people get their say. And even though people that have no idea what they're talking about, who this Al Fury character has no clue.
Whoever that is.
Yeah. All right, Kyle Quinn. We've come to the greatest part of the show, and that is your question of the week segment. And we've been sort of hinting around it all show long. And I want to get your opinion as we are moving into the stretch run here. 8 teams remaining in the Super Bowl hunt. It'll be down to 6 by the time the Eagles get on the field tomorrow. But here's the thing. I don't feel it. I don't have the vibe. I haven't had the vibe of this team in about 5 years. I have not felt anything championship worthy about this team since 2019. And that was, and I was out during that season. So I am out. I don't think this team wins the Super Bowl because I don't think offensively they have enough juju to do so. And my question is to you, and you're being one of, and you're reformed. You're still a homer, but you're not a slobbering homer like a lot of them are. You've reformed yourself through your age and your experience there working over there on 94 WIP. So I will give you that. But my question to you is, can the Eagles legitimately win the Super Bowl on the legs of Saquon Barkley?
Again, I don't think it's necessarily the Eagles winning the Super Bowl on the legs of Saquon Barkley. I think they have a good enough defense to where that can be what. Like, look, the Broncos won a Super Bowl in 2015 with a quarterback that couldn't throw a ball 10 yards. I mean, Peyton Manning was one of the most cooked players I've ever seen. We've seen teams win Super Bowls with way worse quarterbacks, way worse passing offenses than the one we had. I mean, the Ravens won a Super Bowl with Trent Dilfer, for God's sakes. Right. So, I mean, it is doable. But, and you know what else the Ravens had? They had a defense and they had a 2,000-yard running back. So, that is a formula that's there. I don't think you're going out on a limb saying that a team won't win a Super Bowl when one wins a Super Bowl every single year. Now, I will say, I agree with you. The path is going to be particularly tough, especially if they have to go to Detroit next week. That's a really tough game to have to go and win. And then, of course, after that, you're either playing, one of the three. We think Ravens, Bills, or the Chiefs. I will say, early prediction, I think the Chiefs come out of that conference again. So it's going to be tough. And the Chiefs aren't necessarily a team that lights up the scoreboard offensively either. So the Lions one, I think, is going to be the toughest box to check for the for this offense. But I mean, look, I don't disagree with you that I would feel a lot more comfortable about the Eagles' Super Bowl chances if our offense was a little bit better in the passing game.
Just to clarify, though, you're not comparing the 2024 Eagle defense and the 2000 Raven defense, right? You're not comparing the two.
Well,
right?
No, I mean that's one of the best defenses of all time.
Okay,
The point I'm making the comparison to the fact that not a comparison. I'm saying that that's an example of that formula working: a really good defense and a good run game, right? I mean, you don't necessarily. Well, it's not ideal. You don't necessarily need the best passing offense nowadays to win a Super Bowl. Look, the Chiefs did that last year. I know they had Patrick Mahomes, but I mean, they won off the back of that defense last year, and they're winning off the back of their defense again this year.
Al's switching accounts here. Now he's asking you that you say your Al Safiri equals Kyle Quinn's mustache burner account. I guess this is your mustache burner account, but
he does talk.
Al. Yeah, it does. Okay. By the way, the Eagles, if they have to go on the road next week. This is a programming note. We are week to week right now on the show, as are the Eagles. So as long as they keep winning, we're going to keep coming back. But if the Eagles do not win on Sunday against the Rams, we will not be back until the Thursday or so after the Super Bowl, which will come back and wrap up the season and throw a bow on all that. But if they do win against the Rams on Sunday, which honestly I think they will, I think the Eagles are destined for a matchup in Motown against the Detroit Lions. I think the Commanders put up a decent fight in this game tonight against the Lions, but I think ultimately they just don't have enough to go up against the Lions.
Yeah.
But the Commanders are a team that's going to have to be contended with in the future in that NFC East as they begin to assemble the team around Jaden Daniels. But I think the destiny will be the Eagles-Lions next week. And now, mind you, the Eagles have never won in the history of their franchise an NFC Championship game on the road. So that's something to be taken into consideration, but that's more for next week. But Kyle Quinn, where can the folks find you out there?
Yep. So on the dial 94 WIP every Monday through Friday, 10 to 2. I'm producing for Joe and Hugh, and then on Twitter at Kyle_Quinn WIP.
All right, Kyle, my main man. Well, listen, thank you once again for coming on, and we're gonna talk some football next week, hopefully, and go Birds.
All right, buddy. Go Birds, Matt. See you.
All right, Kyle Quinn there on the program as every week, and I want to appreciate and thank him for his time, and I want to thank all of you for your time, even Al Zafiri and his fake mustache, whatever the hell that was all about. Before I say goodbye, I do want to update, and we're going to review my picks from last week. Not a very good wild card weekend for Manny B, as I was completely off the res on a lot of these games. I believe I just won one. Yes, no, two and one. 2, 1, 2, 3, 2 and 4 on the weekend. Obviously, I picked the Packers to beat the Eagles because I don't believe. I also picked the Chargers to beat the Texans. I was going with Tampa over Washington, Buffalo over Denver, and then Baltimore over Pittsburgh. And I had the Vikings beating the Rams. So 2 and 4 as we head into the divisional round. I am taking, of course, the Eagles to beat the Rams. I'm also taking Buffalo over Baltimore. I believe KC beats Houston and Detroit does beat Washington, setting up the game of the century between the Lions and Eagles next Sunday or Saturday. No, Sunday, right? NFC championship games, period, are never played on Saturdays, right? They're always played on Sundays. So I believe that's how it's all going to break down next week as well. But we here on the It's a Wrap Sports are not done. Matter of fact, it's probably happening here very soon. We will be coming right back. We got the Flyers Clear the Ice programs. That's the wrong one. Sal, as you on the show today, as the Flyers are in Jersey playing the Devils. And then tomorrow, we got the Birds Flyby, the quintessential Eagle post-game show, again, hosted by our boy Sal G. So make sure you're checking back on the network and everything else that we have here on It's a Wrap Sports as we continue to bring you real talk, not Homer slobbering, fan stuff. We talk like it is. Homers are welcome here. All types are welcome here. Everybody's welcome here. I don't have to say that. That's common human dignity. I don't have to remind people out there that you matter to me. Of course you all do. We're human beings and we have to be kind to each other. So I am not going to make you matter to me a selling point of this network. That's ridiculous. So, but if you're going to come correct, or don't come correct, and we'll have some fun with it either way. I cannot wait, and I love it. So please continue to interact and have fun with us here on the network until we talk again tomorrow, or I'll be back tomorrow night for the final word with Matty B at 8:30 or 8 o'clock, whenever I can get on the air. But please keep looking back and checking on all the great stuff we have to offer on the network this weekend and beyond. And until we talk again, go Birds, and have a good weekend, and stay warm, stay dry, stay safe, and have fun.